Alice Cooper is a name that is always linked to killings on stage, screams that make your blood boil behind thick curtains of smoke, and eyes that are as dark and cold as Hell's Gates opening wide. He is more than just a singer. He created a theater cult where every show is a ritual sacrifice and the audience gladly becomes followers in a show full of blood, snakes, guillotines, electric chairs, and broken teenage dreams. Alice Cooper was more than just music. He was the first person to make rock into a visual and spiritual experience. He was an entire universe. In that universe, hurt children could speak out about their pain. People who were different from everyone else could no longer hide how strange they were. And he himself, who used to be a sick and lonely preacher's kid, was reborn as the personification of death, fear, and freedom. He is the father of shock rock and the model for bands like Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie, Slipknot, and America's Worst Fear on TV in the 1970s. Millions of people still saw him as a dark messiah, even though he was made to look like a demon wrapped in snakes and cut off his own head on stage. Alice Cooper is a living paradox, though, behind those smeared black eyes and creepy laugh. An honest husband, a committed Christian, a world-class golfer, and a man who fell into hellish drinking and then found salvation through faith, love, and music. Sadly, he passed away. He did not quit. He didn't drift out of sight. There's still Alice Cooper. He was both a monster on stage and a teacher to the lost. It will make you question everything you thought you knew about him, even if you think you know him. Are you ready to enter Alice Cooper's hell on stage? Beginnings. Alice Cooper was born on February 4, 1948, in Detroit, Michigan. It was a cold city with lots of factories and churches where people prayed on Sunday mornings. However, Vincent Damon Fournier did not grow up like most kids do today. As soon as he breathed, fate put him in a place between two worlds, the light and the dark, the holy and the gross. The preachers in Vincent's family were very strict about their work. Arthur Maroney Fournier, his grandpa, was an evangelist and a leader in the Jesus Christ Church of God. His father, Arthur Fournier Jr., was a preacher who was respectful and kind. There was more than just reading the Bible. They followed every word of it. Vincent grew up in a home where there were prayers, preaching, and a holy feeling that filled every room. There were rules, symbols, and respect in that world, and sin and redemption always lived together. But Vincent could not avoid being a sick child, even though he lived in a very religious family. He was weak and sick a lot of the time and was hospitalized a lot. Moving to Phoenix, Arizona, in the hopes that the dry, warm weather would help their son get better was an unintended turning point where his light and evil first met. Vincent did not think of angels while he was in Arizona nursing home, where he spent many nights by himself. He was deeply interested in Halloween, masks, old scary movies on late-night TV, and the disturbing images of death. He thought about awful funerals, bloody stages, and people who were half real and half nightmare when he drew, wrote, and imagined. Performance and art started to speak to him, but not in the way his parents had hoped. Vincent was torn from a very young age between God's moral rules and the allure of the forbidden, between the demons in his mind and the real world. A dual identity was born from that life that was based on faith, but also thrived in darkness. On one side was the good church boy, Alice Cooper, the other man, who would become a symbol of horror, theater, and revolt. Beginners in their careers. It wasn't meant for Vincent Fournier to be a singer. His singing wasn't very good. He couldn't play any instruments well, and he wasn't the type of child whose parents wanted him to work in the arts. Others couldn't deny that he knew how to get people's attention. For Vincent, who was still a teenager, the school stage was the right place to start going crazy. In 1964, Vincent was a student at Phoenix's Cortez High School. He made a fake band with close friends Glenn Buxton, guitar, Dennis Dunaway, bass, and John Spear, drums, to enter the school's talent show. The group was called the Earwigs, but they didn't play music for Beatles songs. They played plastic guitars and lip-synced to tapes. However, that lie turned out to be a huge success. They came in first place. What's more, they found something important. They wished to turn into a real band. Soon, the Earwigs turned into the Spiders, and Vincent became the lead singer for the first time, not because of his voice, but because he was there. Wearing cheap jewelry and dyeing his hair black were all things he did to stand out and keep people looking at him. He'd make a show if he didn't have ability. He would become a legend if he wasn't already a star. Real rock and roll was played by the Spiders. Over time, they built a strong fan base among Phoenix's young people by playing at parties, warehouses, and school gyms. The band looked wild and rebellious, but they were actually working hard. They stopped copying the Beatles and made their own sound, which was a mix of garage rock, psychedelic tones, and a dramatic feel. The band's first song, Why Don't You Love Me, came out in 1966. They then changed their name to The Nas and started touring Los Angeles. Luck didn't come easily, though. Todd Rundgren's band already had the name Nas, so they had to change it again. Right then, Alice Cooper was born, stuck between being angry and wanting to shock people. A name that sounded like a nice old church lady, but would come to represent pure evil in the theater. The only person in the band with that name was Vincent, which was funny. Vic Funia had started to make a stage character that was different from anything the world had seen when he made fun of a high school Beatles tribute.in edition. Alice Cooper wasn't just a band anymore, that Vincent was in it. There was a lot of sound, light, and raw feeling in the show. It was a beautiful mess that sparkled and came to life, like Halloween come to life. How shock rock got its start. The name Alice Cooper sounds innocent and girly, like a proper middle-aged woman. No one thought it would become the rock stage's most terrifying sign of blood, darkness, and fear, but Vincent Fournier found who he was in that conflict. He would give the world the opposite of what they expected, times 10. In the late 1960s, Alice Cooper moved to Los Angeles, where there were already a lot of bands. Vincent became the band's formal frontman, but it was hard for them to find a place among all the new bands. In their early shows, things often went badly. People left the show, the power was turned off, and chaos broke out. He didn't give up, though. Not understanding him, he would make sure they would always remember him. Since then, Alice Cooper's stage has been a place of worship for obsession. Not only music anymore. Live snakes, guillotines, nooses, fake blood, broken dolls, and Vincent changing into the fictional character Alice made the theater a creepy and seductive place to be. Not himself anymore on stage. He changed into something very different. Something dark, scary, hypnotic, and provoking. In 1969, Alice Cooper signed a deal to release their first record, Pretty's For You, with the help of fellow avant-garde icon Frank Zappa. Even though it didn't do well at the box office, it was their first, weird, theatrical, and completely different album. Moving to Detroit, an industrial, gritty place where people didn't want polished songs but a musical punch in the face, was the real turning point. Alice Cooper found safety there. Their battle cry was the song, I'm 18, from the 1971 album Love It to Death. This song, which was written by a confused teen, became the anthem of a lost age. Alice Cooper wasn't just a band after that. They caused a stir. Their tours turned into dreams where Alice was killed by a guillotine every night in a way that was so real it sent chills down my spine. The crowd kept coming back for more, at first horrified and then hooked. It wasn't enough for Vincent Fournier to make a figure. He created a whole genre called shock rock, in which music and images mixed. The stage was both a place of punishment and freedom, and the artist didn't tell a story. He turned into the scary persona that people wanted to see. Beyond that point, Alice Cooper wasn't just the name of a band. The only name people used for him was that one. And Vincent finally accepted one fact after many performances and stage deaths. He wasn't Vincent Fournier anymore. He was Alice Cooper all the time, not just on stage. The pinnacle of success. Alice Cooper was more than just a rock star when he was at the top of his game. The Alice Cooper Band ruled every big stage from 1971 to 1975. They broke rules and changed what was acceptable in mainstream performance. While the Beatles sang about love, Alice Cooper screamed about how society was falling apart, how young people were being smothered, and the nightmares of city life. Their 1972 album Schools Out made them famous forever. Its lead song became a worldwide anthem for teen rebellion. So much so that some schools banned it for fear it would lead to fighting in the classroom. But that only made the story stronger. Have you ever wished you could tear down the school walls? Anyone who hadn't wanted to scream "Schools Out" forever as a way to feel free? What shocked people wasn't just what they read. Alice Cooper knew how to put on a show. They spent a lot of money making the stage look like an execution site for the 1973 $1 billion Babies tour. Real bodies, electric chairs, and cut heads falling into the crowd were all used. Within hours, all the tickets were gone. Parents got mad. The media blew up. He smiled and added, and Alice Cooper. This was another monster that society needed to face itself. The song, Billion Dollar Babies, went straight to the top of the Billboard charts, and the tour was one of the most successful of the decade. The band Alice Cooper was once booed off the stage, but now they are on the same level as music giants like the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. Songs weren't being written by him. For an age that felt lost, alone, and like they didn't belong in the world, he wrote manifestos. In 1975, when the band quietly broke up, Alice Cooper's image lived on. Vincent Fournier now officially goes by the name Alice Cooper. His first album as a solo artist was called Welcome to My Nightmare. It was more than just a record. It was a scary musical theater show where each song was a scene and each performance was a way for everyone to work on their mental health. The horror was in everyone's eyes once more, revival after the fall. When he was at his best, Alice Cooper was every kid's sweet fear. The real Vincent Fournier, though, was going through a hell that no one could see behind the scary makeup and burning sets. The first album he made by himself, Welcome to My Nightmare, came out in 1975, taking his work to a new level of excellence while also putting an unnamed amount of pressure on him. He wanted to be grosser, scarier, and bigger than he used to be. To deal with things, he drank. Initially as a support system, later as a full-fledged addiction. What started as a few whiskeys at night turned into a full bottle of bourbon every day. Cooper stopped playing a monster on stage in the late 1970s. He was a monster, hooked on drugs and falling apart. The 1977 album Lace and Whiskey showed a man who was losing his way and introduced Maurice Escargot, a strange, disjointed, and alien stage detective. People in the crowd no longer understood him. Even Cooper himself could not control the beast he had made because the press made fun of him. He was admitted in 1978 because he was binge drinking. That battle led to the creation of From the Inside, a very personal album that showed how an addict's mind falls apart and how a hurt soul is broken. The fall wasn't over, though. At the start of the 1980s, records like Dada, Special Forces, and Zipper Catches Skin were released. These were artistic experiments made while the artists were going through relapse, recovery, and relapse again. It was no longer scary to be around Alice Cooper. That man was SAD'd, and no longer were the sounds scary. They were really worried about it. Cooper wouldn't let the fear last forever, just like he wouldn't let one of his most dramatic stage resurrections last forever. Around the middle of the 1980s, things started to change. After quitting drinking and smoking, he was able to see things clearly for the first time in almost 10 years. Constrictor marked his return in 1986, bringing a new Alice Cooper that was darker and sharper, but still in charge. The Nightmare Returns tour was the live rebirth of a superstar who had almost passed out and was now standing tall and in charge like never before. When Trash hit in 1989, it was the real boom. Cooper released the song Poison with Desmond Child and John Bon Jovi. It put him back in the Billboard Top 10 after almost 15 years. On this occasion, though, there was no tired person behind the camera. The scream came from a survivor, an artist who had been freed and was now shouting not just shock, but rescue. That was the end of Alice Cooper's campaign. He was the founder of shock rock and the one who Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie, and Slipknot looked up to. No longer were his shows just scary shows. They turned into temples of theatrical rock that show monsters can be saved if they are brave enough to face themselves and keep coming back from the dead, everyday life. No one would guess that Alice Cooper, the monster of rock theater, is actually a devoted family man, a devoted believer, and a person that has found peace through faith behind the horrifying makeup and the hellish shows he puts on stage. In 1976, dancer Vincent Damon Funia married Cheryl Goddard. Their marriage has lasted more than 40 years, through addiction, rebirth, and the spotlight's constant shifts. It's common for relationships to end with each tour, but Alice Cooper kept the promise he made at the wedding to love and only love one woman for all time. Cooper is proud to be a present dad to his 3 kids. In conversations, he talks about his family a lot, not as a crutch, but as an unseen force that kept him grounded when everything else was falling apart. The light at the end of the tunnel for him is his family. They are where the show ends and real life starts. However, Cooper's return to Christianity, not just as a ritual, but with real belief, may have been the most important turning point. He told me once that I was very close to hell and that I knew I needed a guide. He didn't show off his faith to get attention. That it was quiet, deep, and steady for him. He prays every day, goes to church once a week, and never hesitates to say, "I'm a Christian, and my name is Alice Cooper." The two things don't go against each other. When he thinks about his life, he doesn't feel bad about anything. He made mistakes, had bad days, and lost himself. But he learned from them, got back up, and used them all to make art. If it helped him understand himself and love the people around him more, then no scar or drug was pointless. Alice Cooper isn't perfect, but he's also not the monster that many people used to think he was. He has found peace today in the eyes of his wife, the laughing of his children, and the stillness of his faith. It is stronger than all the screams from the crowd. Legacy and power. In front of red lights, fake blood, flying heads, snakes wrapped in wires, and screams that sounded like they came from hell, Alice Cooper did something that no one else had ever done. He turned rock into a scary play with themes, messages, and routines as dark as a sacrament. It wasn't just music that he did. He directed, played, and wrote plays. He was also the star in a show that mixed tragedy, obsession, and dark comedy in every riff. In the late 1960s, when most artists were still into hippie ideals or political protest, Alice chose a path that was completely different, shocking, eerie, and full of meaning. He saw every show as more than just fun. There was a fight between the self and fear, between social control and the dark sides of each of us. So, he set the standard for a whole group of performers who came after him. Rob Zombie's feel for horror movies, Marilyn Manson's seditious performances, Slipknot's masks and violent stage shows, and Kiss's use of black and white paint and fireworks. Whether they know it or not, they all stand on the shoulders of Alice Cooper, the artist who made fears come true. He couldn't be ignored by critics. According to Rolling Stone, he was the bad guy inside all of us, and that's what made him so scary and fascinating. He was the raw truths we try to hide. Induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame happened in February 2011. It was long overdue, but well-deserved honor for an artist who not only brought rock to life, but also changed it as a creative art form. Alice Cooper does more than just act. He is both scary and alluring. He is a figure of darkness in pop culture. His memory will live on even as the days go by and new generations come up. Today is the present day on stage, in music, and in every shared fear that everyone secretly wants. At 77 years old, Alice Cooper is still unstoppable. He has lived through decades out of the spotlight and in his own darkness, and he is still writing his legend by going back to where it all started. An unexpected event happened in the year 2025. He got back together with his old band after more than 50 years, put out a brand new record, and started one of the biggest tours of his career. On July 25, 2025, Alice Cooper reunited with Michael Bruce on guitar, Dennis Dunaway on bass, and Neil Smith on drums. Fans were taken back to the 1970s. Friends who worked together to make Love It to Death, School's Out, and Billion Dollar Babies. It wasn't just a musical comeback with a new record, The Revenge of Alice Cooper. It was back to the roots of horror rock as it was first made by Bob Ezrin, the same genius who helped shape Cooper's sound. What was even more unique about it? On the album, recordings of the late guitarist Glenn Buxton were restored, and Robbie Krieger of The Doors made a disturbing guest appearance on the track, Black Mamba. This wasn't a throwback. Making that claim was brave. No matter how much time has passed, Alice Cooper is still one of the scariest and most captivating stories in rock and roll. But Cooper wasn't happy with just a studio album. He began his Too Close for Comfort tour in May 2025 and played in many big towns in the US and Europe. In the fall, he joined forces with Judas Priest, making a show that rock fans from Toronto to Los Angeles, New York to Berlin, and everywhere in between could not stop talking about. 42 years have passed since Alice Cooper gave up drugs and alcohol. That choice saved his life and his business. Now, every morning he plays golf, runs the Solid Rock Foundation, and lives happily with his wife Cheryl, who is with him on and off stage. For Alice, going on an inner journey is just as important as a dive into fake blood and loud music. Not a chance for retirement. Alice Cooper is still creating new stage ideas, signing autographs, writing songs, and laughing big. She is also still the most beautiful nightmare rock has ever made. For him, age is just a distraction. For as long as there are lights and people watching, he'll come out in black and white makeup and laugh in a way that is both funny and scary to tell us that monsters have hearts too. Thanks, Alice Cooper. A life where you play the monster and live like a good guy, with skulls, guillotines, huge snakes, and makeup straight out of a nightmare. He used to be the epitome of fear on stage. Under the mask, Alice Cooper is a loving dad, a devoted husband, and a calm person in the crazy world of rock and roll. He's been through every temptation and every depth, from addiction to mental breakdown, and come out on top as one of the most recognized, long-lasting artists in modern music history. Alice Cooper is 77 years old and still rules the stage. He now uses the story of his life to inspire younger people. Truthfully, work tough, and don't let the past overtake your future. Because of his crazy acts, Alice Cooper is not a hero. He's famous because he picked truth in a world full of lies. He picked honesty in a field that often eats souls. Even though the crowd was loud, he never lost his own voice. He spent his whole life turning into a monster to say what other people were too scared to say. And then he quietly left the stage and went back to being a man, kind, humble, and clear-eyed. It's not just that Alice Cooper is rock's most beautiful fear. He is live proof that a heart that knows how to love, believe, and find its way back to the light can come through even in the darkest places.